Alright all, and welcome back to Blair White's blog for a monumental video. Obviously it's the day one preview of the Cheltenham Festival. I've been waiting a while now. I was kind of been teetering when I was going to put it up. I was going to do it just after the Dublin Racing Festival, but then the equine flu came in, so I gave it a little bit of a breather. I know usually these Cheltenham videos and these kind of bigger festival previews are more of the watched videos, obviously. So if you're the normal lads, welcome back. And obviously, if you are new, hope you do enjoy and hope you can just get into debate about Cheltenham. That's what I'm here for. Not saying whatever I say is correct. Half the time I'm correct, half the time I'm not. But that's why we love the game. My decision might be something completely different to yours, and that's what I love about horse racing. So I've got my notes written out for day one of the Cheltenham Festival. I'm going to cover it mostly in-depthly, the Grade 1 races, and then I'll have a few just little shouts for the handicaps at this stage. Obviously, it's very hard with the handicaps. If you don't know, the way I do these videos is I'll do the 4-day preview, like the day 1 to 4 previews, now in pretty in-depth. This will be the in-depth video, which is obviously around a month before Cheltenham, and then the week of Cheltenham, when declarations start coming out, I'll do videos as kind of the days progress, but they're going to be small, and they're just kind of more so if some horse was declared in a race that I'd had him for another race, that sort of stuff, so I can update you guys about who kind of my final selections are. But for now, these are kind of they're not really anti-post because it's now non-runner, no bet. So the prices have kind of plummeted because of that. But it's what I feel at this stage in time who's going to have a chance in these races. I've tried to also, just before I start, I've tried to also mix it up a little bit. Obviously, I know in the past I have been quite Irish dominant. Again, I'd say I am Irish dominant, but I've tried to throw in as many English horses as I feel fit. But anyway, moving into the Supreme Novices Hurdle, and obviously this week has seen a massive plunge of money for Fakir Duderie in the Supreme Novices, the 4-year-old for Joseph O'Brien, recently bought by JP McManus, and he's now into 4-1, I think, or 9-2 on some boards, and it's just too short for me to get interested in. I can see why people are seeing it, as I think it's not the greatest Supreme we're ever going to see. I'm against Angel's Breath. I just can't have him at the prices either, considering what he has actually achieved. So I can see the point to backing Fakir Duderie, but I kind of missed the boat, to be honest. If you had him at a tidy 12-1 or something, I'd be saying congratulations, but I couldn't be tipping it up at this stage, with a month to go at 9-2, considering it suddenly just seems a ploy that he's going to run in this race because Sir Eric seems to have the triumph wrapped up. But I'm going to oppose him, and I've been banging on about this horse pretty much all year, this Classical Dream. He's now 8-1 for the Cheltenham Supreme Novices Hurdle. He won at the Dublin Racing Festival, the Grade 1 Novice Hurdle, Chanel Pharma Novice Hurdle, by a head, I think, a head or a neck to Aramon. But what you won't see if you haven't watched the race is the fact that he was clearly headed on the run-in, to the extent where I think Aramon probably went a half length up on him, but he re-rallied, and Aramon just couldn't go with him in the last couple of strides, and he nicked him on the line. But also, you might say, oh, he's only beaten Aramon by a neck, but he beat Vision d'Honneur again by 6.5 lengths, and I just got the impression going into Leopardstown that the Elliott camp were quite, I wouldn't say bullish, they're never really bullish, but they really like Vision d'Honneur, and they thought he had a very good chance for the Supreme Novices. So I'm intrigued by that form line, to be honest. I think it's one of the more rock-solid pieces of form. I don't think he's that dissimilar in terms of what he's actually achieved to Elixir de Nuts over in England. They're similar types of horses. But I think Classical Dream will be the Mullins #1 in this race. I suspect Ruby will ride him. And I know they haven't had a winner of the Supreme now since Duvan, I think, in 2015. But they're still always close. Like like last year was kind of the first year that they were kind of nowhere because Gettelberg completely bombed out. But like 2016, Min was beaten by Altior. 2017, Mellon was just beaten by Lebec. So they're right there, even though they haven't been winning it the last couple of years. And you do have to be wary. I have one here at a big price, which I know is going to make some of you start throwing things at the computer or the laptop or whatever you're watching this off. But I think if he runs, and obviously this is a massive if he runs sort of a bet, but Tornado Flyer at the moment is 25 to 1. And I know, pulled up last time in the Lawler of Nace Novices Hurdle behind Battle Over Doy, and clearly wasn't right. And you do obviously run the risk that in a week's time or something, they're just going to say he's out for the season because, you know, something went amiss. But if I can just take you back, just so you can see my reasoning, if you go back to his maiden hurdle at Punchestown, I've actually done a fair bit of research here. And the second, Take Revenge, has won a maiden hurdle since. The third, Dream Conti, has won a maiden hurdle since. The fifth, Cuneo, has won a Pertemps qualifier since. The seventh, Press Conference, beat Animix in a maiden hurdle since. And the ninth, Bootlegger, even won a maiden hurdle down at Clonmel. And the 10th, Discordantly, has been placed in 2 maiden hurdles since. So it is top of the bus maiden hurdle form. I think it was a really good maiden hurdle, and he won that easy. That was over 2.5, but he was very keen. So I've always thought he's been a 2-mile horse since his bumper win at Punchestown last year. And that Grade 1 bumper form, let's put it into perspective here. Felix Deji, whoever's backing Felix Deji, you don't want to be watching these videos because I'm not a fan. But he's 14 to 1, I think, for the Supreme. Tornado Flyer beat him 20 lengths in that race. So I think that just rests my suitcase, to be honest. And I think if he does run, I think he'll be overlooked because of that last run. And I think he's got a decent enough each way chance. 25 to 1 seems big, certainly, in my eyes. Move on to the Arkle Novices Chase. And I've had my reservations. I won't lie to you. I've had my reservations about Larichburg all year. But they seem to be kind of evaporating by the minute, to the extent where I ended up backing him at the Dublin Racing Festival. And of course he won. Now, obviously assisted by Knocknanews falling early, and there was a couple other, not like Paloma Blue didn't run and stuff like that. I do like Paloma Blue, but he's such a shit jumper. Like, I just couldn't have him in the Arkle. The Arkle is one way of testing your jumping, and he's just a crap jumper. Larichburg's 10 to 3 here. He's a top-notch jumper. He's a horse that kind of is good at 2 miles, but actually isn't that far from being a 2.5-mile horse. So he's going to stay pretty well. As I say, he's an excellent jumper. He's won every chase start this year, apart from coming a half-length second to Delta Work, who's going to take a whole heap of stopping in the RSA. So I think there's plenty to suggest that Larichburg is in the right area. He's the one horse as well. Well, actually, my kind of each way shout, in inverted commas, is maybe similar. But he's the one horse that's going to come to Cheltenham on an up. Well, at the moment, like, because I'm here on a Thursday, and actually Kalashnikov is down to run tomorrow in the Kingmaker. But like, Layler's going to end up going there straight. I don't mind Layler, but he's a horse I find hard to catch right. And he's coming there after being well beaten at Sandown. Kalashnikov was beaten at Kempton. Dynamite Dollars is out with injury. So I think 10 to 3 actually is not a bad price, and I can see him going very close. From an each-way perspective, I've actually said a lot about this horse before. Silos Emery, he's now down to 6 to 1. I'm not a man for after timing it, but I did manage to get a little bit on at 10s each way. Small cash, to be fair. But his beginner's chase win hasn't worked out too badly. The 4th, Expatriate, has won since. The 8th, Ben Rubin, has come second in a beginner's since. And Vaynard, who was a 66 to 1 horse, who unseated in that race, won over in England. So it hasn't worked out too shabby, and he's top grade open company Grade 1 hurdle form, and I think he's just the forgotten horse of the race just because he's obviously fairly unexposed, and he's debatably, he's probably the second best novice in Ireland. So if you want to take the impression that the Irish novice chases over 2 miles are better than the English ones, I think these are the two to be on. We'll just skip over the Ultima for now because I'm trying to get in the big races, which means we're on to the champion Arkle. And I do know at the moment I've tipped up quite a lot of Mullins horses, and it is something that I do try not to do, but I just end up doing it. And the champion hurdle is no different, unfortunately. I'm with Lorena here at 4s, and I know, you're going to say she's beaten nothing. 100% agree. She has it all to prove. I agree. But there's just something about her. You know when you get an inkling? And now sometimes I get an inkling and it all goes pear-shaped, and sometimes I get an inkling and it does work out. And I just have an inkling this horse is an absolute superstar. I think they think she's an absolute jet, to be honest. And I am worried because I do think, I think as a lot of people would probably say, if she was just running against Bouverdare, you'd be a lot more confident than running against Bouverdare and Apples Jade. And I can't have this, I'm not... Apples Jade's a really funny horse for me because I can never catch her right. Whenever I do put her up, I was all in on her last year for the Mayor's Hurdle and she was absolutely pants. And then I haven't been with her all this year. She won by 73 lengths in 4 starts. But you do take the risk that I don't think Cheltenham's perhaps her favourite track. She's been beaten twice there now out of her 3 runs. And I'm not sure whether she's just going to get a freebie up front like she got it in the Irish Champion Hurdle. But this idea that she was beating mugs in the Irish Champion Hurdle is just wrong. Super Sunday's a class horse. I know he's a bit, you don't know where to put him. He's not really a 3-miler, not really a 2-miler. But he won the race last year. He beat Faugheen in the race last year, showing plenty of speed. And he was out on his feet. He was going backwards by the end. I was there, and he was walking over the finish line. Mellon was miles behind. And these are good horses. I know Mellon hasn't been up to much this year, but he was second in the Champion Hurdle last year, beating a neck, half a length perhaps at best. So he's a good horse. Super Sunday, a good horse. And she beat them out of sight. So she's a massive danger. And if it wasn't for that just what happened at the end of last year, I think she would be favoured. But I just can't have her just because of that. And I would take the risk that Lorena just has that bit of X factor herself. Both of them obviously getting the mayor's allowance, and that she can do all right. I don't really have I don't even have really a small nibble each way because, to be honest, it is one of those races, you're not going to get more than 16 runners in the Champion Hurdle. And if they run to form, the first 3 will be Bouverdare, Apples Jade and Lorena. I don't know in what order, but if they run to form, those 3 will be the top 3. So I don't think it's much of an each-way proposition race. I've obviously been a fan of Espoir d'Allen. I think he's a really cracking horse, but I just can't see him doing anything in this sort of a race. So I might just leave that one to go for now. And we'll see come closer to the time whether there's anything we can get stuck into each way. The Mayor's Hurdle, it's going to be similar enough, unfortunately, with Mullins here as Benny Dadu at 15-8. Now, obviously, this is completely dependent on Apples Jade and Lorena. And I'm taking it on trust that those 2 are running in the Champion Hurdle, and therefore they're not in the Mayor's. Benny Dadu is a class horse, beat Apples Jade twice at the end of last year. But even before that, she just oozed like she had something about her. I remember seeing her on her first start in Ireland at Limerick Beginner's Chase over Christmas. My God, she was a mighty horse. She's a bit like a Vroom Vroom Rag, I think. We'll probably never see the best of her because I think she's probably a better chaser than she is a hurdler. But there's not a Mayor's Chase, and I don't want there to be a Mayor's Chase, to be honest. I probably would prefer Benny Dadu to run in the Ryanair or something, but she's not going to. She'll run in this. They're going to do a Quavega on us. She's just going to come here fresh. And if the other 2 don't rock up, she's by far the best mare in the race. And I can't see anything beating her. I think there is actually a good one each way. Usually the Mayor's Hurdle throws up some odd horse running into a a place at a fairly big price. Obviously, a midnight tour last year for Alan King. And I'll be siding with Alan King again here. Mia's Storm at 16s was touted, I think, as being an alright chance for the RSA last year, but didn't make it to the festival. She was an alright jumper. She was an alright chaser, but her jumping went to pot near the end of the year, and then she fell twice in a row. She fell in the Cordo Star at Christmas, and then fell at Aintree. Put her back over hurdles this year. They started off, I think, in a handicap because she was pretty well in, and she won that. And I think she went on to win a graded race or a listed race last time out. She's a good, honest horse. She's probably a better hurdler than she is a chaser, and 16s is a big enough price. And finally, the last non-handicap of the day one is the National Hunt Chase at 4 miles. OK Corral's in here at 3-1. Can't have him at that price. I couldn't have any horse at that price in this race. I just don't see the point. Like, I think everyone gets a bit over the top. I think actually, I see where people come from with, watch the rider bookings. And obviously you don't want an absolute numpty on your horse. But I do think at times a little bit too much is made of it. And actually, if you steer clear of the horses ridden by Derek O'Connor and Jamie Codd and those sort of stuff, you'll get better prices on the other ones. I don't know what the scene is. Obviously, if OK Corral runs, he has a chance, but I don't think he'll get home. Ballyward is in there at 7-2. I would back Ballyward if I knew he'd be running in the race, but I don't want him to run in the race because I think he's got a good chance in the RSA, and I think he's just too good a horse to be kind of not wasting. I wouldn't ever say you'd be wasting your horse in the 4 miler, but I think he's just got a bit of class, to be honest. But the horse that he would have come second to him last time out is Discorama. He's a horse I don't know whether he's going to run in this or not. I suspect a lot depends on what he does at the weekend. He's entered in the 10-up novices chase at Navan. And I'm very intrigued. He's the sort of horse that you just got to watch out for, because you wouldn't be surprised if he rocks it up in maybe the Ultima, maybe the Kim Muir, but you wouldn't be surprised if he rocks up in this as well. He seems to be an all-out galloper. Personally, I prefer not to run in this because I think Brian Cooper gets on pretty well with him, and I'd prefer Brian Cooper to be on him than an amateur. But that's obviously the way of the race, and if he does turn up, I would have a bit on him. I've found 2 here at prices, and you'll be glad to know that they are English horses. Well, the English people watching will be glad to know they're English horses. I think, and these are obviously dependent on whether they run or not, as is with everyone. But Drover's Lane at 16-1 for Rebecca Curtis. I don't understand why nobody's having their horses with Rebecca Curtis. I know it's an overused phrase with with trainers that don't have many horses, that they should have more. But she did have heaps. She was really good at training. She had some really good horses at Fisher's Cross, T for 2, all this. And now she kind of really doesn't have that many. But even out of the few she has, she's got some quality little horses. Drover's Lane being one of them. And she's got a horse as well who's actually got a sniff, I think, in the Albert Bartlett. I can't remember his name now, though. He won at Chepstow. But this Drover's Lane is 3 from 4 over fences, beating Lebroy last time out at Cheltenham. The fear is the furthest he's run over is 3 mile 1, so stamina is completely up in the air, to be honest. And you do wonder whether he's going to run in the race, or as like Discorama, he'll end up in a handicap over around 3 miles, which would probably be more suit. You'd know he'd stay in that. He's a horse I like, though. He's got a likeable attitude. I like the trainer, and I think he's got a sniff wherever he goes. He will run at Cheltenham, but just not sure where. One that will run in this race, though, at 25-1 is Rio Quinto for the ever-growing Ollie Murphy. He's only run once over fences, which is obviously a big concern, but he beat Lovener Money by 13 lengths at Lingfield. He's a stout stayer. He looked like that over hurdles. He looked a bit slow over hurdles, to be honest. Even then, he won a maiden hurdle by 34 lengths, so he's not a bad horse in any right. And I was just watching Ollie Murphy's stable tour over the equine flu period, and he said this would be his target. So at 25, I think he's a solid enough option. I think he will get home, and, perhaps he has a squeak. I know I've been rambling on for a while now, so I'll keep the handicaps short for now, obviously because we don't know the weights either, so it is hard to predict. I think in the Ultima, though, I've got three. I think Talk is Cheap is probably my main one at 8s. He's obviously not been forgotten by the market because he is 8s. He's a good, consistent horse. He's been behind Labagawa, Lost in Translation, and On the Blind Side this year. Won the other race when he didn't have any of them to beat. So he's a good horse. And he's one of these horses that obviously has been mixing it with kind of grade 1, grade 2 horses. And then obviously he'd be running in a handicap. Now he'd probably be near the top of the weights, but I think he's got a chance. Again, you'll probably be throwing stuff at the computer for me saying this, but I think Single Farm Payment at 12 to 1. He reminds me a little bit of a horse in Ireland called Tudor City. He always runs his race in these sort of handicaps, but he seems to never be able to win them. But he's got good big handicap kind of contest form. He was second in this race 2 years ago, 5th in it last year, second at Cheltenham just before Christmas. He's probably high enough up in the weight, and you know he probably doesn't have the resolve to go win the race. But 12 to 1's not a bad each way price. And one that if he was to run, now I don't know what the story is because he's only run once over fences, but Mr. Big Shot at 14 to 1 for David Pipe, who's a horse I said to follow at the start of the season, and I think unfortunately the training difficulties have come back into play with him, and he seems to just be struggling to get him out. If he was to manage to get there, he'd have a sniff. I think he's a high quality horse and probably a bit better than handicaps, if I'm being honest. The Close Brothers Novice Handicap is a very difficult race, very difficult to find the winner of pretty much every year. Had Tully East 2 years ago, but that was probably my only winner in the race. I think one in here is quite nice, and it's Highway 101 for Chris Gordon at 10 to 1. He's a very likeable horse, 2 from 6 over fences, but 3 of those 6 defeats were behind Dynamite Dollars, who until he was taken out was second or third favourite for the Arkle. So you can't knock that. He's a front-running type, electric jumper, as shown last time out at Cheltenham when only 2 lengths behind Kildesart on Trials Day. That was his first Cheltenham start, and he seemed to really take to the course. The test of jumping really seemed to stand to him, and I think that Kildesart is a handy enough horse. And even then, Highway 101 was battling all the way up the hill. I don't think 2-4 will be of an issue to him, and I think he's got a very good chance at 10 to 1. Obviously, we'll have to see how he's handicapped, but I suspect he'll get in, and I'd say this is his target, because I think they'd be flying too high in any other sort of a race. And one here also, I don't know whether he'd come over to run. Well, there's a horse trained by Tom Taft called Riders on the Storm, who won actually on the weekend with Brian Cooper in the saddle at 16 to 1. He beat Impact Factor by a length, who was previously behind Silas Emery. As a hurdler, he was second in a listed hurdle to Hardline. So he's not a bad horse, showing a good ability, some good ability. His jumping is kind of coming together. He's a bit like Paloma Blue at the start. He just couldn't jump. But I suspect he's potentially overlooked. His 2 first starts over fences was behind Mengli Khan, who at the time looked a very good horse, and then behind Hardline and Get a Bird in that grade 1 at Limerick. He was kind of back in much calmer seas on the weekend, and that perhaps just might give him that boost of confidence he needs. I think 16 to 1 is a big price if he gets in and if he does go over the run. Anyway, that's the end of the day 1 preview. It's one of my longer videos, but obviously it's Cheltenham. You know, you want to get stuck in. You want to do the in-depth analysis. I'm interested to hear, obviously, what all you guys have to say. Keep it constructive if you can, but obviously, if you think Apple's Jade's a certainty, Bouverdare's a certainty, or any race on day 1, who do you think is going to win? Please pop it down below. If you're new to the channel, please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel down below, obviously for more Cheltenham content and moving into the, what am I trying to say even? The spring festivals, that's the one. I was trying to think of the season. But all the fairy houses, Aintrees, Punchestown, I'll be covering them on the channel. So if you want to hear all the previews, all the gossip from that, be sure to subscribe down below. Anyway, until next time, the day 2 preview. Best of luck.